You're checking in with the doctor for the greatest fantasy baseball podcast in the world, starring your hosts, Dr. Fantasy.
I'm ready to rock and roll today.
And Rydawg.
Harrison Masturbator.
Welcome to Doc and Dog, your fantasy baseball geniuses, presented by the Fantasyholics.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Doc and Dog. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I'm here with my co-host Rydawg. Rydawg, you ready to talk about the Baltimore Orioles today?
I am here to talk about the team that actually lives closer to me, but I root for the Nats because I don't like any Baltimore teams. So
you're a traitor.
I like the Redskins too, so I get to go with the bad.
Yeah, you got to take what you can get. So this is presented by the Fantasyholics, and today we are breaking down the Baltimore Orioles. We're in the middle of our MLB mini-series where we break down the lineup and rotation, a few impact prospects, and talk about how it relates to fantasy baseball. So we're going to hop right into it. This is presented by the Fantasyholics, by the way, so make sure you like them on Facebook. And you can follow us on Twitter at Fantasyholics1. Check out our new website, thefantasyholics.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So we'll hop right into the Orioles lineup here today. Leading off for them is Hanser Alberto, playing second base for them. He's currently going pick 243. Not a guy, we've talked about second base at length, how it's a very shallow position. I mean, he's a guy that going pick 243, I don't mind if you want to throw a late dart on him. He does have a history of batting in the high 290s, low 300s. So if you're looking for a guy that can provide some average, I don't mind that. But overall, I don't think he offers a ton of upside. But like I said, if you're looking for some average, he's a good guy to throw a dart at.
I completely agree. I'm not throwing a dart on any Orioles, so that's just me personally. Maybe Austin Hayes. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, and I agree with you that I think part of drafting is looking at situations a little bit. But at the same time, I always look at it, even for a bad team, if the guy's leading off, somebody has to score runs. So
that is very true. I mean, we'll see if they'll score runs at all. I mean, this Orioles team, Doc, it doesn't look like it can have a cure at the moment.
I have no prescription for the Orioles except just being bad for a while.
Yep, get a new owner.
Let's see. Batting second for him is Anthony Santander, who I like saying it like that because it reminds me of Salamander, even though that's not how you pronounce it. He's going to be playing in the outfield for him. He hit 20 home runs last year. I've seen a few people that really like him as a sleeper, but to me, he's very underwhelming. Once again, not in a great lineup. But, and in that position, if he's only going to get you 20 home runs, 60 RBIs as one of your last picks, I think you can do better, and there's guys with better upside.
I agree. And then, I mean, the typical 20 for 60, there's going to be guys in the free agency that can do that. So, I mean, I don't see him being much of a threat unless the Orioles magically somehow get decent, but I don't know. I don't see it happen.
That's going to happen. Batting third for him is Renato Nunez. He has first and third base eligibility. Currently going pick 245. He hit 31 home runs last year. So once again, if you're looking for some power at the end of the draft, I don't mind taking a chance on him. And even though you do draft situations, I also go back to somebody's got to score a few runs for him and somebody's got to drive him in. So, potentially at the end of that draft, if you're getting a guy with 30 home runs, 75 to 80 RBIs, not the worst value. So you could do much worse. But he doesn't offer a ton of upside at the same time. So, but if you're looking for home runs, once again, not a bad option.
I agree. And I just want to state this for the record. And not that it matters much, but for fantasy purposes, this is a lineup I believe that is without Trey Mancini, who is probably the star of their franchise. I mean, I like Mancini. I actually had the privilege. I live about 40 minutes from Bowie, and I go to a lot of Bay Sox games. He's a nice guy. I feel bad for the situation he's in. I think I would have liked him if he would have went to the Diamondbacks instead of Christian Walker, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So there's no timetable for his return. I'm assuming that he's not going to be playing this season. I think that's a fair assumption. I was looking at it because when I was putting together for the notes from the Orioles, I was like, man, I haven't heard anything since he had a tumor on his colon. So I haven't heard anything since he had that removed. So I looked it up, and there's still no timetable. So whenever there's no timetable, that doesn't sound overly optimistic from returning. So I'd assume that he's not going to play this season.
Yeah, or if there is a season. So it's good on him. He's not really missing much time yet, I guess. Tumor in the butthole. Tumor in the butthole. At least it's nothing serious, though. At least he was able to have a successful surgery, though.
He's good.
So now we can joke about it.
Number 4 in that lineup this year will be Austin Hayes, who you mentioned earlier. He's currently going pick 246, so late round dart throw. Has some home run potential, the potential to steal 10 to 15 bases. So he's a guy that he's younger. He was a top 5 prospect for the Orioles, making his way through the system now. So I think he has some potential to provide some numbers. Not the strongest lineup ahead of him. However, he's shown some ability in the minors, and I like taking a chance on younger guys later in drafts just because I think they have more to prove. So he's a guy that I wouldn't mind taking with one of my last few picks.
Yeah, and you told me the only stipulation of being a part of a league or something was to draft one Oriole for this year. I think I would take Austin Hayes, and I've watched him play. Like I said, I go to a lot of BaySox games, so I've seen a lot of these guys come up and play, and he was definitely fun to watch out there in Bowie. So I'm interested to see if he is able to do anything. He can only do what he can do. So I could see him maybe hitting 25 home runs and 20 stolen bases. I could see a 2020 year. As far as RBIs and runs, though, that will depend on who else around him can actually hit. So you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. So.
That's the slogan for the Orioles this season.
That is.
You're their new marketing guy. I'll let them know.
They like making a quick buck, too. So.
Yeah, you got to. Finishing off the rest of their lineup, if you thought the first half was boring, the second half is even worse. So number 5, playing third for him is Rio Ruiz. 6 for him is a name everybody knows, Chris Davis, playing first right now. Number 7, Dwight Smith in the outfield. Number 8, Jose Iglesias, who's more of a defensive-minded guy. Can steal a few bases, but more defensive-minded. Then 9th is their catcher, Pedro Severino. I guess the only guy that has any sort of ADP right now is Chris Davis. He's currently going pick 240. He batted under 200 last year. Doesn't have as much power. Hasn't shown the ability to connect with the ball as much. So I don't know if some people draft him at the end because they're like, hey, I know that name. But not a guy that I'm drafting at all. Yeah,
and it's a shame how bad Chris Davis fell off because 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, he was the guy that they signed long term, and they let Machado walk. And that's got to be a tough pill for him to swallow. They even let Cruz walk, only to sign for a couple million more when he went to Seattle before going to the Twins. So, this team, they're all about saving a buck, I suppose. So
they're succeeding.
And Chris Davis, when you watch him play, I unfortunately get stuck watching Madison games if they decide to play the Orioles instead of the Nets. So, I sit there and watch it, I guess, occasionally. But anyway, so I just look at Chris Davis hitting, and he doesn't hit the ball. And I'm thinking at a point it might be an eyesight thing where he may need glasses. I'm not sure if he wears contacts or not, but maybe you could prescribe him some contacts, Doc, and he can hit that ball.
Yeah, he might need something. Yeah, that sounds like a bad joke that you're making about an umpire. You gotta prescribe him glasses. My prescription for the Orioles lineup is to just start over and hope there's no season.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's start over the next 5 years.
Yeah, even going through their system, they have a really deep system, but their top prospects are still a few years from making an impact. Grayson Rodriguez, DL Hall, some of the Adley Rutschman, who was one of their top picks last year.
Adley was the first overall.
So, I mean, he's still a few years from coming up. So they're a good, I think 5 years is reasonable from even sniffing 500 season.
Yeah, they're definitely a 100-loss team for the next 3 years for sure, and that's a lot.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Their line. We'll move over to their rotation then, which is probably maybe even less exciting than their lineup, I guess. Which is,
it couldn't get worse. It can.
I mean, yeah, that's true. If you didn't think that it could get worse, then you were lying to yourself. So going through the rotation, I'll just list off 1 through 5 here. Number 1 is John Means. Number 2 is Alex Cobb. Number 3 is Asher Wojciechowski. Number 4 is Wade LeBlanc. Number 5 is Tommy Malone. Actually, some of those names I think most people would recognize.
Yeah.
Alex Cobb, Wade LeBlanc, Tommy Malone. They've kind of been around the block, but I think they have an entire rotation of number 5 or 6 starters in the majors. Tommy Malone, and they've all been below average. Realistically, those are all AAA depth guys for most teams. Like, oh man, I need a spot start. Let me call up Tommy Malone. Even Alex Cobb hasn't really lived up to what he was supposed to be at one point. But I legitimately think John Means, he's the only one being drafted right now, going pick 247. Ownership is decently high. I think just because he had a solid rookie year last year. I think he had an ERA right around 3.8, somewhere around there, 3.6 in that range. So he struggled with his control a little bit. His whip was high, didn't strike out a ton of guys, but he had, all things considered, being with the Orioles, a solid rookie season. I think he did the best with what he had. But besides him, maybe you could argue he's a number 5 starter for most teams. The other guys, like I said, I think they're AAA depth guys.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Orioles. I'm going to come out and say, they haven't had a good pitcher at all since God knows when, and they've had every pitcher to really. They had Dylan Bundy, top prospect, and he's nowhere to be found. I believe he's with the Angels, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Kevin Gausman, who's over there jumping around ship. He was with the Braves, and he actually had a decent half. And then Jake Arrieta. I mean, they've had countless and countless of pitching prospects, and this team can't develop pitchers, and it's because it's a hitter's park. It's a small field, and it's in a hitter's park, so I don't have any faith to drafting any pitcher on this team at all until something happens. I mean, even Jake Arrieta ended up going to the Cubbies after being with the Orioles, and he actually ended up throwing a no-hitter, I believe. So
yeah. He had a dominant run with the Cubs, yeah. So
he really did. Cy Young year too. So
the Orioles they're one of those organizations that hasn't really been well run. Even looking at their closer situation, I'll just mention the 2 names here. Hunter Harvey, who's not a top prospect for him, but right around prospect 10, depending what lists you go off of. He'll probably get some opportunities to save some games. Michael Givens will probably get a few opportunities, but it's once again not a great situation. They're not going to win a ton of games, which means there's not going to be a ton of save opportunities. So 2 guys that aren't really worth. I've taken a chance on Harvey in deeper drafts if I really need holds or saves, but not a great situation all around.
Yeah, I mean, I like Givens a lot, though. He is a funny guy. I've had the pleasure of talking with him. He's funny. I actually took Givens last year when I needed holds or saves, and he was the permanent closer. I just wish he was on a different team. I feel bad for the guy. He's not getting it. He's none of these guys that have somewhat of a glimpse of potential aren't getting a shot on the Orioles because of how bad they are. So it's a shame.
Yeah, that's what I wonder with Austin Hayes a little bit, if it'll be a case of if he was on another team. He'd probably be a pretty solid fantasy commodity.
Oh, for sure. You're a 10 times better player. And I bet these guys don't want to play for them. But I guarantee you the general manager of the Orioles is getting trade requests from every single player to want to play for this team.
Please don't make me. Then we'll end off on their farm system here.
Yeah.
They're currently ranked 13th right now, so a little above the middle of the pack. They have, I already mentioned the three names before with Rushman, Hall, and Grayson Rodriguez, three guys who could make a big impact. Maybe not with the Orioles, but they could have a big impact once they make it to the majors, but they're still at least 2 years from making their debut. They do have a few pitchers that are in AAA right now that may be making their debut, and will probably have an opportunity to pitch some games just because their rotation is so terrible right now. So a few of those guys to keep an eye out on: Ryan Mountcastle, Michael Bauman, Dean Kremer, and Zach Lowther.
Yeah, and people are very high on this Mountcastle guy, and I've seen him play. He's definitely talented. But here's what I've also noticed: the Orioles really haven't had a prospect that actually has been semi-decent since Manny Machado. And I can't sit here and think of a prospect that was groomed into the Orioles roster and actually performed. I seriously can't think of one that performed with the Orioles, for the record. So no, Arrieta can't count, unfortunately.
Someone else took their hard work.
Yeah, so if I'm in a dynasty league, I'm not taking any of their prospects, and I just don't have faith in them. I feel like it's some kind of curse. Not that the talent's not there. I'm sure it is, especially with Rutschmanson and Mountcastle. They're talented hitters, and DL Hall's a very solid pitcher with decent mechanics. But it's the Orioles curse, and I think it's something. Once you put on that Orioles jersey, it's just some sign of bad luck or something. I feel bad for those players.
I agree. So not a ton to talk about fantasy-wise. Not too exciting. A little. I hope that you weren't having a great day because we might have just ruined it. But
yep. Yeah.
Any other notes that you want to make on the Orioles?
Maybe they only lose 99 games this year.
Oh, that's a bold prediction. I'm going to write that down in the bold column.
We'll put out a post this week. Be sure to follow us for our Cy Young prediction, where every single Oriole is a Cy Young caliber pitcher.
I think that we should give somebody the assignment of writing a write-up on every single player on the Orioles.
That sounds like a great idea. I'm definitely down for that. I will write on Jesus Iglesias.
That's it.
Here's how he's hitting 40 home runs.
Wow. Sounds like a Villar article.
I'm sure Zeki will watch this one too. He'll hate both of us.
That's fine. Okay, so I think that's it on the Orioles end. So thank you guys once again for watching. This has been another episode of Doc and Dog presented by the Fantasy Holics. If you don't already, make sure you like the Fantasy Holics on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at FantasyHolics1. And make sure you check out the new website at www.thefantasyholics.com. We have lots of great content going up there, so check that out. And we appreciate you guys watching.
Later. Tell your friends and family.
Doc out.
Dog out.